Myth and Literature by M.T. Vasudevan Nair. M.T. Vasudevan Nair was born in 1933, a novelist, short story writer, screenplay writer, film director, critic, and editor, is a prolific and versatile writer. His works depict the problems of human life with keen social perception. He was awarded Padma Bhushan, Kerala Jyoti, and won Kendra and Kerala Sahitya Academy Awards. He has directed 7 films and written screenplays for 54 films. When he delivered a speech at Sahitya Academy in 1995, he talked about the ways in which Malayalam literature has been influenced by myths, folklore, and legends. M.T. Vasudevan Nair is of the opinion that literature has always been affected by the history, geography, myths, and the provincial wisdom of the places of its origin. Ramayana and Mahabharata has a pan-Indian influence. Aidihya is the most sold book in Kerala, which is a compilation of regional legends. The genesis of Kerala itself is linked to a myth. Parashuraman decided to get absolved himself of the sins of committing Kshatriya murders. So he donated all his property to Kashyapu Muni. When the Muni reminded him that he doesn't have an inch of land as his own, Parashuraman hurled his axe into the sea, standing on Mount Gokarna. The sea retreated and gave up a piece of land that came to be known as Kerala. This myth has been the raw material for many poets in Kerala. When Balamani Amma connects the axe with sacrifice, Vailopalli Sridharamenon salutes the axe that was with the early migrant societies to pierce the depth of forest. Though Kerala is a coastal area, our literature don't have much sea-related legends in it. In the novel Chemmin, Kadalamma, the sea goddess, expects the women folk to live a taintless life while their men are toiling in the sea. Many criticized this novel and the film for upholding superstitions, but the late C. Rajagopalachari justified the superstition, saying, "What harm could come out of it if the women of a remote locality continue being chaste, believing in an old legend?" Prominent Malayalam story writers of 30s and 40s were under the sway of the concept of class struggles. But the lives of our ancient writers are actually linked to several myths and legends. Eduthasan, the father of Malayalam language, is the reincarnation of a Gandhavan, an ethereal spirit. Similarly, stories of divine and supernatural interventions are there in the lives of the poets Poondanam Nambudiri and Melpattur Narayana Bhattadiri. However, in our modernist literatures of O.V. Vijayan, Kovilan, Punathil Kunyabdulla, N.P. Muhammad, and M. Mukundan, regional folk tales are used with the status of parables, and allegories. Moreover, young novelists like K.P. Ramanunni and T.K. Kochibawa recreate the folk tales for contemporary times. They consider the myths and legends not as fabrications but as imaginary possibilities. Apart from this, they rediscover the past and blend it with the present as they echo our culture and civilization. Rain at Night, Sugathakumari. Sugathakumari, who was born in 1934 and who died in 2020, an illustrious poet and social activist, won numerous awards and recognitions, including Kerala Sahitya Academy Award, and Padma Shri. She was the founder secretary of Prakriti Samrakshana Samiti, an organization for the protection of nature, and of Abhaya, a center for destitute women. In Rain at Night, Ratri Maya, Sugathakumari not only addresses the rain as a comforting acquaintance but also identifies herself with the rain. It is a romantic poem juxtaposing a sudden downpour with the confinement of the poet in a sanatorium bed. The poem begins with the weeping, laughing, and whimpering of the rain at night, who is referred to as the pensive daughter of the dusky dark. She is gliding slowly like a long veil into the hospital, where the narrator is admitted. She extends her cold fingers through the windows and touches the narrator, who is in her sick bed. When the poet puts her hand to her ears on her hearing the anguished cry of a mother, the rain at night comforts her. As the narrator has a diseased heart, it can't be cut and removed as other parts of her body. It should only be healed like this. Rain at Night thus witnesses the narrator's love and grief and lulls her to sleep. So it becomes an auspicious night to the narrator, who is thrilled with joy. Actually, before the arrival of the rain at night, the narrator had sleepless hours and was about to freeze into a stone. It gave more joy than the bright moonlight did. Then the narrator says that she knows the kind and sad music of the night rain, her pity and suppressed rage, her coming in the night, her sobbing and weeping when all alone. And when it is dawn, she wipes her face and forces a smile. Then she hurries to do her routine work, as the narrator does. As the narrator is also like the night rain, she knows all of these of the night rain. Thus, the narrator identifies herself with the rain at night. The different emotional states of the night rain are similar to the shifting moods of the narrator. That's why she says at the end, "My friend, I too am like you." As the emotions of the narrator are expressed effectively in an imaginative and beautiful way, and as it reflects a lament for the suffering sick, this poem is considered as a fine lyrical elegy. 50 Years of Malayalam Cinema by V.C. Harris. V.C. Harris, who was born in 1958 and who died in 2017, was a teacher, thinker, critic, theatre personality, and translator. എഴുത്തും പറച്ചിലും and Spectres of Writing are books authored by him. Here he traces the history of 50 years of Malayalam cinema, beginning with Neelakuyil in 1954 and ending with Padamunna Oru Vilapam 2003. According to him, the optimism of the 1950s changed into discontent and disillusionment in the 1960s. The cinema of 1970s and 1980s reflected the impacts of national emergency and modernism. But the films of 1990s didn't reflect the political and cultural turbulent situation that had been there then. However, the music in films has effectively constructed for all the people a public sphere for their past and future. As Kerala has a different socio-political history from the rest of India, it has a distinct film-making tradition. In 1940s and 1950s, the process of artistic productions in cinema were determined by the issues like caste inequality, class consciousness, nationalism, and progress. So, optimism and enthusiasm that existed then was found in Neelakuyil, that was released in 1954, jointly directed by P. Bhaskaran and Ramu Karyat. As many ingredients like a local story, a modern secular subject, and fine music were fused into it, it is still considered to be a landmark film in Malayalam. A decade later, another similar film, Chemmeen, in 1965, by Ramu Karyat, that focused on the local culture and mythology of fishing community in Kerala, created another landmark. The new cinema that emerged in the early 1970s, led by Adur Gopalakrishnan, G. Aravindan, and John Abraham, was dubbed as art cinema. It was a response to the shifting grounds of politics and aesthetics. Swayamvaram, that was released in 1972 by Adur Gopalakrishnan, was the inaugural film of this type. In a slightly different but related way, Thump, 1978, by G. Aravindan, came next, that showed a village community coming face to face with modernity represented by the coming of a circus troupe. The questioning of religious practices by secularization and modernization was portrayed in M.T. Vasudevan Nair's Nirmalyam, that was released in 1973. As national emergency was declared in 1975, all political and civil rights curtailed. As a few politicians, government functionaries, and the police had all the power, people were disillusioned at this time. Though this period produced a crop of films, of which Ammayariyan by John Abraham in 1986 is a remarkable example of this period. It is an important document on the rise and fall of the revolutionary spirit in contemporary Kerala. In 1990s, the liberalization, privatization and globalization began to play a crucial role. So this period began to articulate the concerns of women, the Dalits and the Adivasis. There have been attempts to refine the form and content of the cinema. Shaji and Karun's Vanaprastham, The Last Dance, that was released in 1999, portrayed an illicit relationship between a Kathakali dancer and a young woman from an upper caste family, resulted in an illegitimate child. TV Chandran's Padam ഒന്ന് ഒരു വിലാപം, that was released in 2003, effectively redefined the subject of art in the light of shifting societal perceptions. Apart from all these, the film music addressed all the sections of society. It created a public sphere, a space where all kinds of people can come together and share a common experience and chart out a common agenda for life today and tomorrow. Malayalam's Ghazal, Jeet, Thayyil. Jeet Thayyil, who was born in 1959, is a performance poet, journalist, writer, editor, and guitarist who has published 4 collections of poetry and fictions. He has won many awards, including DSC, Distinguished Service Cross Prize for South Asian Literature and Sahitya Academy Award for English Literature. Malayalam's Ghazal is a poem taken from Jeet's collected poems. The poem depicts what is lost in translation. As every language has its own identity and depth, the poet asks the readers to open the windows to the fresh air of their mother tongue. The word Malayalam, a palindrome, is repeated at the end of all couplets in the poem. That adds beauty to this poem. Symmetry refers to a sense of harmonious and beautiful proportion and balance in poetry. So, symmetry is very difficult to achieve in poetry. But in the name of the language of Kerala, Malayalam, we can find it because Malayalam is the longest palindrome that can be read forward and backward. The poet says that Malayalis won't despair for anything, as they don't have a word in Malayalam to mean it and as they are optimistic. Jeet always lived in foreign countries and so studied in English. However, he developed a love for Malayalam because of the influence of his parents. The poet feels Malayalam as a dynamic language, though it doesn't have proper words for some English words. So, he asks the readers to open the windows and get the fresh air of Malayalam when they have to be too long in the rooms of English. That will help to keep them optimistic and hopeful. Actually, world literature comes to Malayalam through translations. Translations always take away something or add something to the actual meaning of the word in the original language. So it fails to give the effectiveness to the reader. Actually, it happens when Malayalam gets translated into English too. Though poetry has become the school of lost tongue, the poet has understood the identity and depth of both Malayalam and poetry. So he greets the ancestors, scholars, and linguists of Malayalam who really enriched it. Here, he also remembers his father, who used to recite Baudelaire, the great French poet, in Malayalam. However, it seems challenging to Jeet to write a couplet in Malayalam, as his father said. That is why he has written this Malayalam's Ghazal, a poem in a traditional rhyming couplet with the refrain Malayalam, where each line has the same meter. Thus, Jeet has shaped a fine couplet on Malayalam. Agni, Sithara S. Sithara S., who was born in 1972, is a Malayalam short story writer and translator of repute. She has won Kendra Sahitya Academy Golden Jubilee Award and also Kerala Sahitya Academy Award for her short stories. Sitara's characters are rebels with a difference. They just pass over shameful situations and laugh at the stereotypification of gender roles. Her heroines search for their genuine individualities. Her Agni is the story of a rape survivor who declines either to be persecuted or to be destroyed with disappointment or disrespect. She resolves to penalize the wrongdoers on her own way of vengeance. When Priya finished the typing in her office, it was dark. She had to ride her bicycle for 10 minutes along a narrow lane with undergrowth lining its sides to reach her house. On seeing three men standing on the road, she stopped her bike in shock. One of them was Sanjeev, a burly fellow who ran a telephone booth near her office. The other one was Ravi, a spoiled rich boy whom once Priya had slapped for his taking an obscene liberty with her in a bus. The third one was a stripling who had barely sprouted a mustache. One picked her off, and the other clamped her mouth shut. The third hesitated slightly on seeing a sanitary pad, but that didn't stop him. All her struggles had no any use. All the three raped her brutally. When she came to her senses, Priya dragged herself to her feet with great effort. Her body was full of unfamiliar aches. She got into her clothes that were lying scattered somewhere, took her bicycle, and reached home. Her mother was in the kitchen, her sister before the TV, and father was not home from work. Priya went into her room and closed the door. She washed her body twice. She decided not to cry. The next day, Priya went to the office as usual. On seeing her, Sanjeev asked her how she felt the previous day. Priya said that he wouldn't be able to satisfy a woman Then she turned to Ravi and said that he was a real man. On her way home from the work in the evening, she stopped her bike, ignored Sanjeev, but smiled at Ravi. When she got home, the stripling was waiting for her. He sobbed and begged to forgive him. Priya patted his hair and asked him to go. Priya went to Sanjeev's booth every day and called up all her friends and watched the feeling of inferiority creeping over his face every time with the spirit of vengeance. Similarly, whenever she saw Ravi, smiled at him. However, that created uneasiness in Ravi. Actually, these small triumphs gave great satisfaction to Priya. When Ravi asked Priya one day why she smiled at him, she said that she liked him. For the next 2 days, Priya didn't go to the office. Priya felt she hated herself. Devi came to her house when she was alone and said that he has realized his love towards her. Then Priya asked Devi whether that love began the day that she had slapped him. The confused Devi asked whether she was taking revenge on him, and then burying his face in his hands and started to cry. Priya too started crying and said that his love was her revenge. Raising his face, Devi then touched her tear-stained cheeks as if to console her with retreating fingers. Thus, Agni presents sexuality and man-woman relationship from a totally different perspective. Pictures Drawn on Water by K. Satchidanandan. K. Satchidanandan, who was born in 1946, is a bilingual poet, critic, playwright, editor, translator, and fiction writer. Having got his voluntary retirement from Christ College, Satchidanandan became the editor of Indian Literature, the English journal of the Sahitya Academy. Currently, he is president of Kerala Sahitya Academy and lives in Thrissur. He is of the opinion that he translates poems from other language to Malayalam and vice versa to enrich Malayalam literature, train his poetic skills, and test the strength of his mother tongue. Pictures Drawn on Water is a poem in 5 parts, written in the wake of the great flood in Kerala in 2018. It shows the different phases of the deluge. It visualizes how a normal monsoon turned into a fierce deluge all of a sudden. It also comments on the courage and resilience shown by the people in their facing a tragedy. Apart from these, it reminds something that we lost, which now resides in the memory of slush left behind by the water. It is actually a translated one from Malayalam by the poet. As we look on is the very first part of the poem. Here, like a long-known neighbor, the flood comes into the house, eats, has a siesta, and then forces the residents to leave the house. The water tells the awe-struck people of the house that there is nowhere else to go. Here, the ruthless behavior of human beings who encroached the river's territory by blocking its usual paths into the sea is implied. In the boat, a sick mother, a pregnant daughter, and a son who looks after all at home are shown. The three quarrel among themselves for the other to climb in the rescue boat, which has space left only for one. Tragedy makes human beings selfless and death fearless. In The Cat, we see an abandoned cat that wonders on seeing the fishes that tickling him and laughing at him. Here, the poet says that when there is no branch or wall to climb upon, even a cat becomes a philosopher. In Slate, we see a slate that sits under the water in the vacant house. It remembers the words and sketches scrawled on its grey surface by tiny hands. It also dreams to create a new universe within its four wooden frames and thus become a part of the earth and of infinity. In slush, we find the slush gathered in the house after the flood, with the obscure memories of fields, pond, and lily and blue flowers in the harvested fields, the flower collecting children, yellow butterflies, the plowing bulls, seed sowing dark hands. Through these memories of the slush, the poet says that the things that we had lost now resides in the memory of the slush left behind by the flood. Thus the poet has effectively used the deluge as a metaphor for social and ecological concerns in this poem. According to the poet, it was the people who forced the flood to encroach their territory by blocking its usual path into the sea. However, the flood makes human beings resilient. They have also realized that the earth is not belonged to them, but they belonged to the earth. Thus, the poem presents flood in a favorable light.